Okay, so here we are again, and the work now since the boat has been cut in two. I glassed this over with 6 layers at the top, and then 4, and then 2, as per the inside. And then I wasn't 100% sure if that was too much, but I contacted B&B Yacht Designs, and they've said that no, that's fine. And one of my concerns was, how's it going to bolt back together? Because this is there's an extra thickness now in this place where the bolts go through. And they've suggested, well, just fair the area over. So I've bought these what are called phenolic micro balloons. So this is about 1 litre. This is 1 litre, and it's very light, and it kind of sounds a little bit like talcum powder. And the idea is that they're easy to sand. So if you use the colloidal silica, it makes a very tough, hard structure, and it's very difficult to sand through. So I'm going to use these and potentially fill in some of these areas to make a good seal, and then try and level that off by sanding to create two nice flat surfaces to go together. And I may then need to use slightly extra long bolts. We'll have to see. So one of my first jobs today is to trim down the aft section here. I did the forward section last time, but the aft section hadn't been curing so long, so I decided to leave it until today. So I'm going to do that as the first thing, and then I'm going to see how well the two halves go back together, whether I'm going to need longer bolts, whether I will need to do some sanding, and how much filling is going to be needed. So it's going to be a bit of a look and see. So that's the first job. The second job is also from B&B Yacht Designs. I spoke to them about my plan to use the laser dinghy mast, which is 2.5 inches, not 2 1/4. And they said, yeah, that's fine, but you will need to increase the size of the mast collar to take account of the lost material. So here is the mast collar, and this sits on the foredeck, or just below the actual foredeck. And in this area here, I'm going to drill a 2 1/4 inch hole to take the mast. So the plan now is to drill a 2.5 inch hole to take the laser mast. That means this hole will be 1/4 inch bigger. And so I'm losing 1/4 inch of material all the way around the circle. And they're suggesting that 1/4 inch would make a significant difference. So basically what that means is I need to cut a new piece of material for the mast collar, which is slightly 1/4 inch wider at that point at the front, so potentially 1/8 inch each side. So I need to make a slightly bigger one of these. So one way I could do that is with the piece of 3/4 inch marine ply that I've got for the aft seat. So this is the seat that goes between the two tanks, so I'm not sure if I'll ever really use this, because it's going to get cut into a kind of a V shape. And I think the centre seat was definitely going to be needed, but this one I'm not 100% sure. I was never 100% sure if I would ever use it, but I decided to cut it anyway because it was on the plan, and it is optional, and I don't think I'll actually use it. So I'm thinking potentially I could use that to cut a new mast collar. So I'm going to put this mast collar on here. It's just about big enough. That's just about big enough to cut a new one, which is just, let's say 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch thicker at the front area, at the front section, than the existing one. So I could actually do that. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I've got enough 1/4 inch plywood left to cut out 3 pieces and to glue them back together. That seems like a lot of work, but I could just cut it out of here. So that's what I'm going to do. And what else? So I don't have to do that now, but researching that was what I wanted to do this weekend. So that is now done. So I'm happy with that. I can cut that any time. Could do it this weekend, maybe not. What I want to do is, as well as bolting the two halves together and checking to see what the fit is like, now that I've put these fiberglass on, I'm going to look at the centreboard case. I'm going to build up the centreboard case primarily because it's a very quick job just to put the case together, but you need to paint the inside with epoxy to make it waterproof. and it needs 3 coats. So that needs 1, 2, 3. It's going to take at least 8 hours. So 1 in the morning, 1 in the at midday, 1 in the afternoon. So I need an 8-hour window. I also want to do the aft tanks. They need some more work. Predominantly the fact that the stringer that I've glued on for the aft tank, I think it's a little bit high. I want to drop it by 1/4 inch so I can get enough room to put a fillet on top of the seat once it's in place. Because at the moment the gap between the top of the seat and the bottom of the transom stiffener is probably about, I don't know, something slightly bigger than 1/4 inch, 3/8, something like that. And it's not quite big enough to get a stick in there and create a fillet, which is what I want to do on top of the seat to make it waterproof, of course. So I'm just going to lower that by potentially 1/4 inch, and then I'll do the other side the same. I'll get the tanks done, and then also I want to get the holes cut for the access ports. Now the plan I'm going to do with these is, it's a very simple job to cut the hole. You just kind of mark the hole on the inside there that you want to cut, and then use the jigsaw to cut the hole, and that will go in. And then because that then screws into that panel, because that panel is only 1/4 inch of plywood, I'm thinking of cutting another section slightly bigger and then cutting another hole the same size. So I've got a ring of plywood, and that ring of plywood I will glue to the inside of where the port goes, so that when I put the screws in, the screws are going into 1/2 inch ply. It's just to give the screws something more to bite on, and make it more waterproof, because trying to get a screw into 1/4 inch ply without going all the way through, to make it waterproof is going to be quite tricky. But if I'm going into 1/2 inch ply, it's going to be a lot easier. So a little bit of extra work, but I think that'll be worth it in the end. So keeping it waterproof, stop the leaks. So I've got 3 of those to cut, 2 in the aft tank side walls, and then 1 in the forward bulkhead. Quite a lot to be getting on with. So let's see how much I can get done. Okay, so work on the daggerboard case is going to have to stop for a while. I've got a question really about how it goes. The plans, although very detailed, don't actually tell me which way round this piece of, these pieces of timber which hold the daggerboard casing apart, which way around they go. So this piece here, I've cut to about the right length, and that's going to go in there. That's going to be the front of the daggerboard case, and then there's going to be another one at the back, and then another one at an angle, and a piece across the top, make a little triangle to keep the angle of the daggerboard like this. And I've actually put the daggerboard inside and tried it both ways, and when these pieces of wood are 1 inch by 7/8, which is 25 by 22 mil. And when I put them 25 mils, put them so that the 25 mil dimension is across between the 2 boards, then the 25mm gap there is quite big, and the daggerboard feels a little bit too loose. And when I put them so that they're 22mm apart, the daggerboard feels reasonable fit, a little bit wobbly, but space to maybe put some glass tape and some epoxy on it, which is what I would expect. So if that was the end of the story, you'd say, well, let's just go with that then. That seems to be the way to do it. But when I measure from the front of this piece to the back of this piece with the daggerboard in place, then putting these in that way, it's slightly too big. So these are cut slightly too small, and it doesn't seem to fit. Whereas if I put them that way around, it fits exactly perfectly. So both ways seem to be right. So there's no actual obvious way that it looks to be done, and it doesn't actually specify in the drawings it just says posts 22 by 25, 7/8 by an inch, and it shows where they are. And then nothing in the instructions explains it either. So rather than do it wrong, I'm going to ask the question and find out what to do, find out which way it is. Right, so on with a different job. Okay, so I thought I'd give you a close-up view of what I've just done. I've just cut a circular hole out of the forward bulkhead to be roughly the right size to fit the opening port. And so there's the hole and there's the port, and that fits in not badly. It doesn't rattle very much, it's pretty, doesn't look very round and even, but it does actually fit that quite well. So what my plan is now is to cut a backing plate to draw the internal diameter hole, and then I've laid this on top. This is the filler, the inner piece. This is the piece with the screw thread on it, which goes in the hole. I've laid that on top, and I've put a screw through all the holes, and that's given me kind of a little indentation where the screws might go. And then I've just used my compass and drawn a large circle around it. So I'm going to cut that out, both those lines, and then the idea is that will glue behind that existing hole in order to take the screws. So I haven't done this before, but that's the plan. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Okay, so here we are. After a little bit of extra trimming, I've managed to get my wooden ring cut. So the idea is this will now, that now takes that, and the idea is that this ring will sit up behind that one there to give the screws something extra to bite into. So that will go there, and then when I put the screws through, this will sit on the back. Once that's all glued and screwed in position, that's the screw fitting that goes in there, and that makes that into a waterproof hatch. I'm not going to start doing any gluing just yet. I'm going to concentrate on doing the dry fitting of things, cutting, sizing up and putting things in place, and I'll leave the gluing till towards the end of the day so that I can lock the room up and keep away from the fumes. That's kind of my preferred way of working. Right, let's clean up this mess and look at the next job. This is what it looks like from the outside. It's just a single U-bolt with a plate. Of course, it's stainless steel, a stainless steel plate, and all this is going to get glassed in. So there'll be glass inside the holes, there'll be glass underneath the plate. So this shouldn't be subject to too much moisture. It's not going to be underwater, but they move some spray and dampness around, I'm sure. And then on the inside, you can see the two bolts coming through, and they've got a washer and a bolt on there. Now I may actually look into getting some nylock nuts so they don't so that they don't come undone, or possibly put a second nut on and just tighten it. And obviously now with my new access hole, I can make sure those are tight. So that's the kind of main reason for having the access hole. If I wasn't going to be having these bolts, probably wouldn't have bothered with the access hole and just left it, but these bolts are going to be used for lifting, so there's going to be one on either side and there'll be a strap onto both of them, and then a central lifting point, possibly on davits. Let's see how that goes. So there we go, that's one down. That's one down, and one more to go. I just thought I'd give a demonstration of this new product I'm using, which is the this phenolic micro balloons. It's a kind of chocolatey colour, and actually makes the. So this is a pot of epoxy that I've just mixed for 2 minutes. I'm just going to put some of this phenolic micro balloons in now. So I've just done one bulkhead. So I've done one mix already, so this is now the second mix. So it's just to show you, because I did have a problem with the battery going flat, so I just came and grabbed it again. The charges come up a little bit. So this is a bit easier to mix than the colloidal silica, because it doesn't fly everywhere like the colloidal silica does, because it's a bit like talcum powder, and as you're stirring it just goes flying. You've got to stir really, it's worse than flour. It really is. But this just looks this lovely colour. It's just like chocolate. It's a really chocolate-like mix. So the idea behind this, the reason I'm using it, is because it's supposed to sand really easily. So my plan is to put this on the bulkheads, even though it's not necessary to do so, and then sand it off, leaving back any bits. Basically, I'm just basically fairing the bulkheads so they're exactly flat. So I'm going to use a large flat piece of wood with some sandpaper and then hand sand it, not using a tool. Trying to make it as flat as possible. And then possibly might need to get bigger bolts than the ones I've got. Now, just dribble it over here. I have booked my grandmother ice a cake, and I think it looks just the same as that. Just get it all out on there. And then use the spreader. Okay, so that's it for this evening. I'm going to leave that overnight. So Well, there we are, that's what it looks like, a chocolatey couple of nesting bulkheads, so hopefully when I sand that back in the morning or in the afternoon, that will all be beautiful and make a really nice join. Right, I think now time for a beer. See you later.